Hi everyone, welcome to the Tropic Marin channel. My name is Sam Nietzer. I'm a researcher at the University of Oldenburg here in the beautiful city of Wilhelmshaven, and also CEO of the recently launched Cyreef, the company that is producing corals through spawning for the aquarium trade, meaning for you. So now we want to talk about the ICP that is new on the market from Tropic Marin. There is already video online that describes the process, how you take the sample, etc., and what the ICP actually does. And now we want to look into what happens when you prepare your sample and you need to get the data somehow and how all that works. There's two versions. It's also described in the other video. The ICP water analysis is an analysis that gives you data of all the relevant elements that can be measured with the ICP. Right? So everything that is relevant and can be measured, you get with that. With the ICP water analysis plus, you get a little bit extra, because that also contains or provides data about parameters that cannot be measured in the ICP. So stuff like alkalinity, nutrients like phosphates, nitrite, nitrate, but also elements such as fluorine that can't be measured in the ICP. So you need a second device for that. So with that one, you get all the extra stuff, but the ICP itself is the same measurement. Inside the box we have a detailed description how to take the samples. It's also in the other video. You take the water samples as described. Actually, you can take the stickers and put them on the sample tube, right? And this will be then scanned at the lab. So once you have prepared everything according to the description, you put them in an envelope or in that beautiful box. There is the address sticker. And please don't forget to fill in your name and address, so in case something happens, it can be sent back. And even more importantly, don't forget to put on the right postage, so it will actually find its way to the Tropic Marin water testing lab. Once we did all that, and it's off to the post office and arrives here, it will be scanned. What does that mean? So these barcodes need to be connected to your account. Basically, you have to go to the website, Tropic Marin Water Lab. It's actually lab.tropicmarin.com, and conveniently it's already on my screen here. If you haven't done so already, you can register. Just put an email, password, super easy, super quick. And then you have an account, or in our case, you log in and ta-da, there's your account, all the water analysis, etc. So now we want to send in a new sample. We can either go here on the right side, it's already showing that you can connect it there, or you go through analysis and new sample. And then you just type in the barcode number that is seen here. That's the TM6 and then a lot of zeros. And then we do the three, and now we select an aquarium. So you can save basically as many systems, I guess, as you want, or aquarium. So we have all our aquarium systems, or almost all of them are in here already. So I can select one that I want to connect the sample with, and in this case it's SR2. And then we just click on go, and it says, thank you very much, a new analysis has been successfully started. So now the water lab knows that this barcode is connected to your tank. So once it arrives, it will be scanned. You get a notification via email that the sample has arrived in the lab, and then it's being processed. Usually it's fairly quick, just a few days actually, until the analysis is done. And then once it's completed, you get another email. And this email notifies you that it's done and already contains a analysis as a PDF file. So I have one open right here. This is now a sample for the ICP, not the plus. We can now look at that report that you get. First category is actually it's in German. I'm very sorry, but I can't change that PDF to English. You just have to trust my translation skills, I'm sorry. Basic parameters, which is like salinity, pH, EKH, etc. That is measured only in the plus, so we don't have values for that here. And then we come to the Tropic Marin block system, so the new system that allows you to dose certain element groups specifically. There's another video about that, and there's more coming, so I'm not going to go into detail with that one here. The next category is like the macro elements that are used for calcification, and also halogens that are important for health of the organism, so it gives you all the concentrations. Again, there's one missing that cannot be measured in the ICP, that's chlorine. We got the relations, because the relation of certain elements to a salinity is also really important. It shouldn't be too much out of balance. It can cause problems, so you get all that in the plus again, because the salinity is not measured in the ICP. Okay, and then we come to the trace elements, trace metals that are really relevant for enzymes, a lot of metabolic processes, also coloration, and can also be problematic because most of these metals can be fairly toxic if there's too much in the water, like copper, nickel, zinc. So if there's too high concentrations, the corals really don't like it. So it's also a good way to notice contaminations. Like for instance, a magnet has broken, the cover of a magnet has a crack, and inside it's corroding and it's leaching out all sorts of metals. And you would see that very clearly and ideally early on, and you can correct the problem by A, removing the rusting device, and B, doing water changes, for instance. The next category is the other trace elements and potential toxins. So some of them are physiologically relevant and important, also like selenium. It usually isn't really low concentrations, but is still necessary for certain processes, but it's not that super essential. Anyways, there's also arsenium. What's the English name for arsenium? Arsenic. We got arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead. I guess everyone knows these are not beneficial to anyone's health, just to see that you don't have that in the water. And that is already the end of this PDF that you get with your email. So it already gives you an interpretation, and it doesn't only show the measured values, but also the range in which these concentrations should be, and a recommendation what to do. So either if it's above the recommended range, then the recommendation would be to try and lower it. If it's below, then the recommendation would be to add certain solutions, dose these elements either with a block system or with the individual element solutions. With that, you get a pretty good overview and idea what's happening in your aquarium and what you should potentially be doing. We'll look at that on the website in a second, because there it's more detailed, there's more descriptions, what can happen. But now we quickly have a look at the ICP Plus. Basically here, the first category, you get values for everything because it's all measured at different devices, so it's more effort to do it. The block system indicator elements and the macros. So now here chlorine is also measured, and also really important, the fluorine. Get all the relations. And with a plus, you also get the nutrient concentration. So they measure nitrate, nitrite, phosphorus, and the phosphorus is then split into orthophosphate and the total phosphate, like different configurations. You get the relations of the nutrients. That is also important, that it's in a balanced range, that you don't have super high nitrate and no phosphate, because that would be pretty bad. You get the relations from the phosphorus to iodine. That is also relevant for the coral's health. And then we have the trace metals. The way that is measured is identical to the ICP only. So you get the same data basically. And as you can hear, people are working in the background. I'm not sure how successful they are with what they do, but let's ignore that for a second. You get, again, the recommended range of concentrations, and then a recommendation what to do. Should you add something? Should you try to lower certain values, etc. Then again, you have the other trace elements that can potentially be very toxic, like mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, all that. And then you also get the report for your RODI water. So they measure the macros, also nutrients, the phosphorus is being measured in the RODI analysis, and metals that you don't want to have in there or not in a critical concentration. So in our case here, because with that particular sample, we didn't send in an RO sample because, well, we send in ICPs every week, so we don't really need to test the RODI every week. So sometimes we don't send that sample, then it just says NG for nicht gemessen or not measured. German lesson in between. Okay, so that is basically the report for the ICP Plus that you get via email. Now let's look at that on the website. So we're logged in still, thankfully. Now we switch over to the report. So already in the beginning, you get a notification, attention, these values should be considered. So the concentrations of these elements you should take a look at, because they could either be problematic or become problematic. And then there's certain elements that are a little bit outside the recommended range that you should keep an eye on, but it's nothing to freak out about, basically. Different categories, if you click on it, you can just jump to, basically. Here's salinity, for instance, and here on the website you always get a color code. Basically, recommended range is green, and then the yellow is something you should be a bit wary about, and red is an area you shouldn't be in for too long, depending on the whole picture, basically. So some things are not as dramatic as others. It also tells you what it is, what can happen if you're outside the range. For instance, in the salinity here, what happens if you have too high salt concentrations or too low salt concentrations, and how to measure it and what to do. So here we don't need to do anything because that's all good. And now we can scroll through here. They also check for coloration, because discoloration can be an indication for organic compounds that are in the water that you don't want to have. And a smell test is also being done, because that can also be an indication of certain problems. We have the macros again, also with the description, what they do, and what happens if you're outside the range, and what you should do. Okay, that's all good. Then we go down to the macronutrients. So nitrite, nitrate. We're at 1 milligram, it's good, phosphorus, and now we enter the zone of the trace metals. Just as an example, we have now our zinc value, it's fairly low, and the recommendation would be to add the right amount of zinc to come back into the right concentration range. And this can be then either done by the single element solution or with a block system. There will be a concrete recommendation what you could add with regards to your tank. But this is still something we need a little patience until it's ready and online. There will be more videos released about these topics that go deeper into detail, but we don't do that now because the video is already pretty long, and then it gets longer and more, I don't want to say boring, but it could turn that way. All right, so we're down to the additional trace elements and possible pollutants, and then ideally for many of them you get the not detectable. And again, a description, what can happen if there's too much in there and what to do. One really cool feature is that you get a curve, a graph of the development over time of the certain concentration. Then you can see whether or not there's a buildup or if there's a depletion happening over time. So the more analysis are being done, the more deeper the understanding of the processes in the tank get. Very good feature that you can get these insights over longer time spans. And then I really understand what is happening in your tank. Overall, I think it's a pretty easy way to get a lot of data about your tank and to understand what is happening. I'm very happy about being able to get these analyses. Yeah, one thing to consider is how often to send in ICP samples. Yeah, it always depends on the circumstances, I would say. So us here, we usually send one ICP every week because we have a lot of systems. Basically, our livelihood depends on the well-being of the corals, so it's important to have a good understanding of what is happening and detect potential contaminations early on. We do one every week. Usually we do it alternating, 1 week the ICP plus and then the just ICP and plus and just ICP. Sometimes it's also more of the normal ICP and the plus once a month or something like that. For a home tank, I wouldn't send in one every week. I mean, sure, it's great to get the data, of course, but considering that you have a really good eye on it and you know it really well and it's just one system that you need to keep an overview, yeah, I would recommend once a month is sufficient, especially if everything is working fine and the corals are doing well, then yeah, once a month is plenty enough. One feature that is really convenient both for the ICP Plus and the normal ICP is the QR code that is on the sheet here, with which you can directly link this sample to your tank. I just tried it for the first time and actually it's super easy. You just scan it and you go to the link. If your data are already saved and you're already logged in and the number is seen on the screen already, so you don't have to type it in. I just switched that to English because it's the English video. We select the aquarium. In this case, it was SR1, go, and now we get a notification that it has already been started. But of course, it has already been started because we already connected it. But generally, super easy, super convenient. So pretty cool. I think we covered a lot of ground. Yeah, if there's any questions about the ICP, about the process, about the data, just post in the comments here. That is it, basically. Okay, well, thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye-bye. Take it easy.